To really wrap our heads around this strategy, we've got to ask ourselves a pretty critical question. How does a nation actively protect its vulnerable citizens when the global economic weather gets, well, incredibly rough? With unpredictable supply chains and rising costs all over the place, a government can't just cross their fingers and hope for the best. They absolutely need a multi-layered defense.
Let's start with Section 1, the macroeconomic picture. Okay, let's look at Hong Leong Bank's economic research. They're pointing to a surprisingly robust 5.2% real GDP growth for 2025. Now you might be wondering, what's driving that? Well, it's being propelled by incredibly resilient domestic demand and household spending. Despite all the global noise out there, the country's internal economic engine is just humming along beautifully. And that gives policymakers a really strong foundation to work from. Now here is the kicker. The central bank decided to keep the overnight policy rate, the OPR, steady at 2.75% for the fourth straight meeting. In a world where we've seen central banks making some seriously drastic moves, this pause, it's highly significant. It signals total confidence. And you can see how the OPR acts as an absolute anchor here. While other market rates, like the 3-month Claybor and the 5-year Malaysian government securities, are kind of bouncing around with the market, that steady 2.75% holds completely firm. That's even with escalating geopolitical conflicts in the Middle East and global supply chain threats. Bank Negara Malaysia is holding the line, giving businesses and consumers a predictable borrowing environment while international markets face intense volatility. So, summarizing this macroeconomic view, we've got sustained domestic demand and a very stable core inflation outlook. Actually, this benign inflation environment is exactly what gives the central bank the flexibility to keep rates unchanged. They don't need to slam on the brakes. Instead, this neutral policy stance continuously supports Malaysia's forecasted moderate growth path of 4.8% for 2026. But make no mistake, they're keeping a very close eye on those geopolitical downside risks. Let's move on to Section 2. Inside the Dewan Rakyat. Let's look at the math for the 15th Parliament's composition. Out of the 222 seats in the Dewan Rakyat, we're looking at a solid 153-seat majority for the government bloc, which includes confidence in supply agreements. That's stacked up against 69 seats held by the opposition. Now, you might be thinking, why does a seat count matter in an economic explainer? Well, it's simple. Political stability provides the absolute necessary foundation to enact strong economic defense strategies. When a government has a decisive majority, they can pass budgets, enact policy reforms, and respond to global crises rapidly and with real authority. So we have steady interest rates and a strong parliamentary majority, but what does all that actually mean for everyday Malaysians? Which brings us to Section 3, shielding the vulnerable. During the latest National Economic Action Council, or M10 meeting, Prime Minister Anwar Ibrahim issued a really direct order. He said, "I've instructed every ministry to realign initiatives and ensure no one is left behind, especially the poor and vulnerable groups." He made it crystal clear that government resources have to be precision-targeted. Broad sweeping subsidies, those are out. Highly focused, localized assistance is in, specifically designed to offset the global supply crisis for the folks hit the hardest.
The government is basically executing this systematic, compassionate approach. Step 1, the M10 steps in and guarantees the continuity of essential supplies. Step 2, they precision target government resources so aid actually reaches vulnerable groups instead of getting lost in the middle class. And Step 3, which is probably the most immediate, local councils are being pushed to intervene directly in the local economy to ease the burden on small traders.
So what does that grassroots intervention look like in practice? Well, it means pushing local authorities nationwide to emulate entities like the Kuala Lumpur City Hall, or DBKL, and MARA. These organizations are actively reducing rental rates for hawkers and small business premises. By lowering overhead for the small-scale traders who really form the backbone of the local economy, the government is directly offsetting the rising operating costs caused by global conditions. It's just a highly practical, grassroots-level shield. It's really cool because we can clearly see the synergy here. It's like a giant puzzle coming together. Up on the macro level, Bank Negara Malaysia maintains a steady 2.75% interest rate to anchor the broader economy and foster national growth. Meanwhile, down on the micro level, the government is executing targeted aid and actively lowering the cost of survival on the ground through reduced rents. It's this synchronized push and pull designed to insulate the entire nation from top to bottom. But I want to leave you with this final thought. We've seen the blueprint today,
from steady OPR rates all the way down to discounted hawker stalls. But if global geopolitical conflicts, like those in the Middle East, continue to escalate and global supply chains face even more unpredictable disruptions, how resilient will Malaysia's multi-layered defense strategy truly be? It's a massive stress test of macro policy and micro compassion. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and remember to always keep questioning the systems around you.